Introduction to the Flower Rain of Xingfeng. Everyone likes beauty, and Fengsha likes to achieve beauty. A mysterious and eerie witch from an evil sect, a holy and flawless fairy, a cold and charming martial arts gang leader, a world-renowned stunning dancer, and a ruthless queen in control of a country beauties with vastly different personalities appeared one by one in the cruel and chaotic world, becoming the focus of attention, shouldering different missions, and promoting the world from chaos to unity. As a manipulator and shaper, Fengsha has always been behind the scenes, and history has not recorded his name. The dust of time gradually covers up until it is buried deep, leaving only one sentence. If you see the rain of flowers, it will surely bring forth the wind. Serious emphasis. This article is very serious. *3. Chapter 1. Worry about the city and trapped wind. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Fengsha stood at the end of a dead alley, and the noon sun shone over the mottled old wall, casting a dull expression on his face. Just now, right in front of him, the person suddenly snapped and twisted his companion's neck, then turned back and grinned, emitting a chuckle. This smile is strange and mysterious, not like a human face. It looks more like a bronze mask from ancient times, with a stiff face and hollow eyes. Laughter is like two metal plates rubbing against each other, cold and piercing. Suddenly, two corpses were thrown down and one collided with the opposite brick wall. Banging with a muffled sound, colorful. Heaven and earth suddenly fell silent, with a dull film covering both ears, and no sound could be transmitted to the eardrums. A strange face still appeared before my eyes, emitting a silent yet soul-piercing sharp smile. The already oppressive high walls and narrow alleys waft a strange smell. It smells like bean curd jelly served with sauce that has been rancid for half a month, poured with pepper that has just been rolled by hot oil. It is not only pungent, but also dazzling. The sandstorm's pupils almost instantly tightened, like a cat illuminated by strong light. This taste is not right. Why is it not right? It's just not right. Everything came suddenly and came to an abrupt end, the whole process was as absurd as a mime. The strange smell that filled the mouth and nose quickly faded, and the eyes gradually became dull and heavy. The mind could only barely move. There was a thud in my ear again, and I instinctively withdrew my neck. Isn't it? Come back. The side door of the courtyard wall was violently kicked open, and a group of black-robed people rushed into the dead alley. Fengsha, what happened? Are you okay? Assassins. Less wind means less wind. You're really skilled. Many familiar faces swayed in front of me, with expressions of various beings, seeming to be worried and secretly pleased. Many familiar voices were ringing in my ears, clamoring and coming together, seemingly full of kindness and hidden murders. Everything is so unfamiliar and familiar, and also so suspicious and wary. The sandstorm remained silent. When you can't figure out the situation, it's best to remain silent. This guy with a broken neck, why is his face a bit familiar? He came this morning, and I received him. I just met Mr. Ren. As the principal. The slow thinking is indescribable, as if the axle is entangled in mud, trying its best to slightly rotate it. Recalling things is particularly difficult, but I am very sensitive to this term. Upon hearing the three words, Ren Zhu Shi, I immediately remembered the name Ren Song. He is Zhu Kwei. The small voice was like a thunderous thunderbolt, and everyone fell silent in an instant, not even breathing loudly. The word vermilion bird seems to have truly touched a key valve, and the originally stagnant memory suddenly surged wildly in the brain. The deceased was Zhu Ke, he was Xuanwu, or a former official of Xuanwu, and it was Ren Song who replaced him. Xuanwu and Zhu Ke both belonged to an immensely large secret sect, with completely different division of labor, each with their own strengths and not belonging to each other. Xuanwu is responsible for internal security and investigating traitors, while Zhu Ke is responsible for intelligence and wealth collection. In theory, the two are on equal footing. Vermilion Bird controls the flow of foreign business, while Xuanwu has the power to investigate internally, with a higher actual status. A higher status does not mean that one can easily kill a Vermilion Bird. There's a lot of trouble now. Please go back to Fengsha first, and I will report to the principal. The sandstorm felt like it was being lifted one by one, with knees weakly bent and toes rubbing against the ground, not knowing where to go. Suicide after murder is clearly a framing and framing. Now he is the only one alive, with a long mouth and unable to speak clearly. What's wrong with Fengsha? You're not scared, are you? Shushi, I thought Fengsha was you. Killing someone would make their legs weak. Wait, are you poisoned? Suddenly, there was a flurry of hands and feet. The wind and sand lay flat on the ground, some people opened their eyelids, and others called in their ears. The afternoon sunlight was very dazzling, and the pupils couldn't help but prick and contract. The still somewhat dull mind quickly regained consciousness and immediately realized that the body was extremely stiff. Subconsciously hooking your fingertips, it takes a long time to give a response. That strange smell is indeed problematic. At this moment, a group of people shouted in unison, Master Ren. What's wrong with Fengsha? Someone whispered about the situation. Ren Song remained silent for a moment and began to assign tasks in an orderly manner. The originally chaotic group of people immediately became well-organized. The sandstorm was forcibly lifted up by someone, and listening to everything in my ear, my emotions were complex and difficult to understand. This was originally the work he did, but now it has become the work that was done. People who have not experienced it firsthand may never understand this emotion. Chenlu is a small country with a rugged and mountainous territory that contains abundant mineral resources. The royal city of Chenlu is called Luqing, a city of exile. This is indeed a wilderness for exiled prisoners. Over time, they gather to form a city, and then a country. Fengsha has been staying in Luqing for a long time, almost forgetting that this is a prison and not his home. He has no home for a long time. As a person exiled by a sect, one must never step out of the city, otherwise it will be a death. The sect is named Four Spirits. As the name suggests, Qinglong Xuanwu Zhuke Baihu. As the young master of the Four Spirits and the only descendant of the previous patriarch, he ascended the throne at a young age and was difficult to subdue the masses. Shortly after taking over, he was defeated by internal struggles due to ideological disputes. Fortunately, someone at the top of the Four Spirits provided protection, both openly and secretly, otherwise he would not have lived to this day. Yu reading www.yuyukeangshu.net. His life of exile, which had fallen to the bottom, did not completely dampen his morale. He relied on his master's secret spiritual power cultivation method. In 10 years, a large network was laid in Luqing, and Xuanwu was established from scratch. The Four Spirits seemed to acquiesce to all of this, initially only providing covert support. Later, the Vermilion Bird entered, and the White Tiger followed suit, actually accepting this independently developed branch. In the end, he was even awarded a seal and badge, officially appointing him as the head of the Luqing Xuanwu branch. The power of the Four Spirits, with Luqing Xuanwu as its fulcrum, quickly filled the entire Chenlu. In this chaotic era, there are 7 major powers and over 100 small countries in the world. Countless small forces occupy one city and one town for separatist rule, and there are many acts of conquest and annexation among each other. Chenlu country is weak in strength, and it is difficult to escape. Fortunately, it is located in the wilderness and mountains, with only one flowing river connecting the inside and outside, making it easy to defend but difficult to attack. Combined with abundant ore production, skilled in casting, and lucrative profits, it has become one of the few paradise in the world today. It is precisely during the competition among the heroes that no one will find it too much to supply high-quality and stable weapons. Many forces are scheming for Chenlu, but the Four Spirits are the most successful. The Xuanwu of Luqing is undoubtedly indispensable, and the sandstorm is even more remarkable. Everything is going smoothly, and the wind and sand constantly yearn. Perhaps soon, they will be able to leave this cage, return to their haunted hometown, and even regain a place in the Four Spirits. With Ren Song's arrival, Mei Meng gradually became less beautiful, and he was clearly sent to replace him. The sandstorm still harbors illusions. After all, to open up territory for the Four Spirits, at least he should be allowed to return to his homeland, even if he continues to be imprisoned. So he retreated step by step, allowing Ren Songen to insert new members and letting himself gradually be sidelined. Under the order to replace the principal, no resistance was made. Until today. Chapter 2. Ascending Heaven Pavilion. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Suddenly awakened from a long-lost dream, there was no one to confide in the desolation in my heart. The sandstorm no longer felt anything wrong with him, and Xuanwu couldn't find out what poison he had been poisoned by even the best doctor. In the eyes of others, this situation is more like pretending after killing someone. Not long after being dismissed, encountering such a situation will make the already difficult situation even more difficult. All of this cannot be a coincidence, some people cannot tolerate him. The reason why he secretly conspired was that he did not take action openly. He may have been concerned about maintaining his senior management of the Four Spirits, or he may have been concerned about the chaos caused by Luqing Xuanwu. In short, there are many possibilities, but they cannot be well-intentioned. There are two when there is one. When a killing heart arises, it will be most difficult to rest. Due to specializing in psychic powers, sandstorms often suffer from backlash. Especially when there are significant fluctuations in emotions, illusion often becomes more real than reality, while reality is even more illusory, making it difficult to distinguish the boundary between reality and illusion. My whole body seemed to be completely enveloped by a chilling chill that had already penetrated my bones, as if I had been lying naked in the snow for several winters. My bone marrow seemed to have frozen into ice, my teeth were frozen and unable to touch it, and my breath spewed out a cold white mist, as if I was only one breath away from death. The sound of knocking on the door was rapid and dull. The deathly bell rang through the brain, causing the back of the head to buzz and tingle. "Please come in." Fengsha tried his best to calm down, forcefully suppressing his backlash and quickly regaining his composure. Whoever wants his life, exchange it for his own. The person who pushed the door in was actually Ren Song, with a calm gait and a slightly strange tone. A deputy guard surnamed Wang has arrived from the city patrol and is leaving the two corpses. The wind and sand could never have imagined this result. Why did the city patrol suddenly intervene? Did you become an official in the Song newspaper? Perhaps I don't know that the Four Spirits are most afraid of outsiders interfering in internal affairs. Is this kid's brain broken? Vice Guard Wang said he received a report and came over to conduct a routine investigation. Humph, a deputy guard from the city patrol department actually personally went to investigate the case, so I had to hand over the body. The wind and sand furrowed their brows. Upon hearing this, Ren Song believed that it was his arrangement and that he had brought in the patrol officer. Of course not, so the situation is very mysterious. When it comes to the government in such a desperate situation, your situation will be even more difficult. If someone uses the topic to make a point, you may not even have the opportunity to defend yourself. Ren Song clearly doesn't care about the facts. Anyway, this hat needs to be worn by the wind and sand. Half a month later, it will be the annual gathering of the Four Spirits of Luqing. At that time, the senior executives of the Four Spirits of the Flowing City branch will gather together to report their duties to the higher authorities. It is precisely at a critical moment when rewards and punishments have been given, that the already difficult situation of the sandstorm is likely to be irreparable. It's going to rain. Mom wants to get married, let's just go with fate. The sandstorms have become indifferent instead. If we must kill him, what reason is not a reason? If you want to keep him alive, there is no reason for it. You really can think of it. Ren Song furrowed his brow vigorously, not understanding why the sandstorm was so calm. Fengsha tugged at the blanket around her neck and said vaguely, "If there's nothing else to do, hurry up and leave. I'm still a bit dizzy." The traces of the conspiracy became increasingly thick, and now no one can believe it, especially Ren Song. The south bank of Lucheng is a dock for loading and unloading goods day and night, with a continuous flow of heavy carriages carrying goods. On the north bank, there is a bustling market full of extravagance and extravagance, known as Red Square. The largest entertainment venue in Hongfang is called Xingtian Pavilion. As its name suggests, the pavilion observes sword dance with its eyes as if it is about to ascend to heaven. The founder, surnamed Gong, is a deceased master of sword dance and swordsmanship. He once performed in the world of dance and even made friends with swords as a woman. His stunning talent shocked the world and he was honored as a guest of honor wherever he went. Master Gong has a descendant who follows her surname Gong. She is a young generation with a beautiful reputation, and her charm is not inferior to that of a teacher. She only needs to travel and become famous. After the death of Master Gong, Gong Qingxiu was unable to support the Grand Ascending Heaven Pavilion, so she decided to purchase land and expand it, build new garden buildings, and build Xuanwu Island, using the exposed Ascending Heaven Pavilion as a cover for the hidden Xuanwu. Xingtian Pavilion is a serious entertainment venue known for performing sword dance and not being influenced by the wind and moon. Gong Qingxiu is the chief of the Ascending Heaven Pavilion and rarely appears. Tonight is a bit special. Gong Qingxiu rarely appears to perform. The main building and sub-buildings of Xingtian Pavilion are all crowded, and all the rooms upstairs and downstairs are fully booked. A person died in a nearby alley, and the patrol officer even went to the door. Ren Song specially invited Gong Qingxiu out and invited the second prince of Qianlu to eliminate negative effects. The effect is very good, and the entire pavilion is filled with singing and dancing, creating a joyful scene. Ren Song sat in the best viewing hall in the main building, watching Gong Qingxiu wielding a sword and dancing on the dance floor, while whispering and laughing with the second prince next to him. Young people are handsome and full of energy. The dance performance is not far away, and it is a secluded garden. The wind and sand lean against the branches of a big tree, silently listening to the noise and watching the excitement there. On one side, it is bright and shining, while on the other side, it is alone. It is inevitable to feel a sense of desolation in my heart. Gong Qingxiu, as the number one dancer in the Qin dynasty, is exceptionally beautiful and skilled enough to make any man fantasize, even resorting to any means to pluck flowers and put them into his pocket. Thanks to his strong support behind the scenes, Gong Qingxiu was able to maintain a holy and aloof high posture, and no one could force her with power. Yu reading www.yuukangshu.net forced her to do things she didn't want. Prince Qianlu must follow the etiquette and dare not have any other thoughts. He also gave Gong Qingxiu considerable respect. Whenever there is a little bit of bad thinking, Gong Qingxiu has long become a beautiful plaything to be played with. Now that he has lost his main position, the Ascending Heaven Pavilion has naturally been taken over by Ren Song. Gong Qingxiu, who is dancing swords on stage, may not be aware that her fate has actually fallen between Ren Song's thoughts. Ren Song is not a kind-hearted person, and currently has many concerns about him. He dare not act recklessly for the time being. If he completely collapses this time, Gong Qingxiu's fate may be worrying. Suddenly, a disheveled round-faced girl rushed out from the end of the flower bushes. She looked up and saw the wind and sand on the branches of the tree. She was both surprised and happy, crying for help, and stumbled over at the same time. Fengsha looked familiar, as if she was an inconspicuous little maid beside Gong Qingxiu, unable to call her name. Looking behind her again, I couldn't help but furrow my brow and jump off the tree. A man with a palm print on his face flipped out of the grass and stumbled a few times before standing firm. His hands were dancing wildly, and a woman's belt was hanging around his neck. Upon closer inspection, it looks quite familiar. one of the trusted attendants of the second prince, surnamed Zhao. It is said to be a reading companion who grew up together since childhood. The prince's confidants are naturally remarkable, and there will never be a shortage of beautiful women around him. How could he come and bully a little maid? The round-faced girl hid behind the sandstorm in shock, tightly clutching her messy and open outer garment with both hands, and shrinking her neck like a quail in shock. Zhao Shiwei was originally staring with anger on his face. When he saw the sandstorm, he was taken aback and forced out a smile. He strode over and said, "So it's Fengsha." The sandstorm let out a deep sigh. "I want to avoid trouble, but I can't avoid it. It's still such a cliché trouble." Chapter 3. Continuous Bad News. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Zhao Shiwei didn't accompany second young master to watch the sword dance. Why did he come here? Did he think that everyone's dance moves, Qingxiu, were not pleasing to the eye? Look at what Fengsha said. Second young master praised everyone about Qingxiu. How dare I not take notice? Then I won't keep you. If the second young master can't find you for something, he'll blame me for the poor hospitality in this place. Fengsha, as it sounds, actually means to make people roll away quickly. In the past, Zhao Shiwei would have been obedient and gone, but now his face is filled with a sneer. To be honest, this lowly maid just knocked over a teacup and burned second young master, so I dragged her out for a little punishment. If you don't believe me, ask her. The round-faced girl shook her head halfway, and Zhao Shiwei showed a threatening look with a dark face. The round-faced girl couldn't help but tremble with fear and dare not speak. Zhao Shiwei, with a proud expression on his face, said with a smile on his face, "How about Fengsha?" Fengsha tilted her head and remained silent. This guy clearly didn't take him seriously. It seems that he heard what Ren Song said and knew he had lost power, so he was confident and fearless. Zhao Shiwei ignored the sandstorm and reached out to catch the girl's arm. "If you dare to run, I'll see how I'll deal with you later." The round-faced girl was grabbed by her arm and pulled towards the wind and sand, with tears in her eyes and pleading eyes. Pear blossoms bring rain, evoking pity. Fengsha looked at Zhao Shiwei, and a pair of clear pupils lit up with a seemingly faint gleam. This is a manifestation of psychic power, which itself has no harmful effect and therefore cannot be defended by normal means. When the supernatural force arises, the effect is immediate. It's like facing the sea and feeling vast, standing at the foot of the mountain and looking up at the grandeur. In short, it directly affects the human heart. With spirit, it can be reduced, with will, it can be supported, and it cannot be completely resisted no matter what. In life, there must be 7 emotions and 6 desires. As long as there is a gap in the heart, the pervasive psychic force will quickly open the gap and amplify the various emotions that already exist. If one cultivates to the highest level, they can even return from emptiness to reality, truly dialysis consciousness. At that time, it will be like an edict from heaven, with one word spoken and the way followed. This is not an ancient myth, his master has truly reached this level. On a spiritual level, he is almost no different from a deity, but unfortunately, the most difficult thing to maintain is the physical existence. Despite living for over 200 years, he still cannot escape the fate of ashes and ashes. The cultivation level of Fengsha is certainly far inferior to that of our ancestors, and it cannot have a direct impact. At most, it can be guided and induced. That's okay, Zhao Shiwei will slowly take care of her. I'll go apologize to second young master right away. He then pretended to leave. Looking at the flickering pupils, Zhao Shiwei immediately felt an inexplicable palpitations. After being stunned, he suddenly regained his senses and chased after him with a few steps to apologize. The wind is weak, the second young master is in high spirits. It's not worth disturbing his mood over such a small matter. I think it's okay with this matter. Really forget it. Never mind, really. Why don't you get out of here? Zhao Shiwei gritted his teeth to himself and stormed away, stomping his foot and crushing a stone on the road, showing his strength. The wind in San's eerie gaze returned as calm as water, turning to the round-faced girl and saying, "Don't think too much, go back and rest well." The round-faced girl wiped her tears and thanked. A smile on the face of Fengsha, a sigh in the heart. A sudden episode shows how bad his situation is. He can only rely on bluffing to scare people, and it also indicates that someone has already reached out to Gong Qingxiu's side. This is a warning of impending danger, seemingly aimed at Gong Qingxiu, but in reality, it is still aimed at him. Nearby came crisp applause. A man in black walked out from the corner path. A hood covering the head, with a black veil covering the face. The eyebrows are heroic, the eyes are narrow and thin, and a pair of bright eyes are unusually indifferent, looking at people like looking at wood. The contour of the veil outlines a soft and beautiful face, while the black robe covering the body complements the delicate and graceful figure. A noble temperament rushes towards the face, and the whole body is full of mystery and alienation, but it is extremely attractive. The sandstorm made my eyelids twitch a few times. In front of the weak, a sick tiger is also a tiger, and the tiger's strength is unbreakable. If the same kind approaches at this time, the sick tiger not only feels embarrassed and distressed, but also becomes even more vigilant. The woman in front of me is a female tiger, possessing a noble status, beautiful appearance, and indifferent temperament, which is the woman that men in the world crave and cannot obtain. This type of woman is also as fierce as a tiger, and the outcome of craving her is often being bitten off by sharp teeth, then torn apart and eaten into the stomach bit by bit. Facing a person with a strong heart and cold blood, if their cultivation is insufficient, the effect of spiritual power is not good, and if they insist on suppressing it, they may suffer from backlash, which is not worth the loss. The sandstorm strongly felt the threat approaching, and instinctively revealed sharp teeth. "Why did you come? Look at my joke." The masked woman remained silent and stood in front of the sandstorm, lifting her face and staring at him. The two were quite close together, appearing somewhat intimate, but not as intimate. Fengsha realized that she was losing her composure and forced out a gentle smile. Gongzi is over there, didn't you go and say hello? My second younger brother rarely has this kind of elegance. As a sister, I don't have his leisure like that. The masked woman had a cold and indifferent attitude, clearly just casually responding. She certainly qualifies for indifference. Because she is not only the deputy head of Luqing Xuanwu, but also the princess of Chenlu. Yu reading www.yuukangshu.net. Any identity can shatter the knees of many men, like a dog lying on the ground wagging its tail and begging for mercy, not daring to have any ulterior motives towards her. The sandstorm felt that the atmosphere was not good, so he deliberately joked, "Did you miss me when you came so late? I thought I should meet you once." The tone of the masked woman's voice still didn't fluctuate at all, sounding like a needle pricker. "I didn't expect Ren Songjin to have some means to push you away so quickly." The sandstorm can no longer hold back its smiling face. The masked woman turned her gaze to the dance stage and said, "I came to tell you that there is no need for us to continue dating." Fengsha was stunned for a while, then turned black and said, "Okay, I have something else to do." Vice Minister Yun Su, please stop. Calling them by their first name, even if they are pseudonyms, indicates that they are not feeling well now. The relationship between the two is actually just a mutual utilization. It is more convenient to assume the status of a lover for some things, and when working with subordinates, there will be fewer concerns, which is not really a deep emotional connection. At this point, Yun Su's proposal to break up was undoubtedly a betrayal. The loss of face was secondary, and more importantly, it was a loss of power. Although not so heartbroken, I will never feel good in my heart. Yun Su took a few steps and suddenly paused. I am aware of the murder case during the day and have also said hello. The Wang vice guard who took the body away will be on a business trip tomorrow and may even die on duty. I should be able to help you to some extent. Anyway, thank you for your breakup gift. The wind and sand calmed down. Zhao Shiwei attacked Gong Qingxiu's maid. Yun Su is determined to break up. Actually, it was all the consequences of the murder case at noon. It's just too weak, causing the herd of beasts to turn red-eyed. If we let the situation develop, we will sooner or later be torn apart and divided. Chapter 4. One punch to avoid 0 punches. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. The wind and sand turned over the tree branches again and lay down, watching from afar as the sword dance of Gong Qingxiu reached its climax, and then seeing the beauty come to a close. The bustling and magnificent garden scattered with people's heads, and the surroundings of the stage gradually became deserted. A gust of wind swept and the ground was messy, just like my current mood. When I was in a daze, the sound of footsteps echoed from far to near. Ren Song strode up the garden path and said, "You're really good at avoiding leisure." "I'm so busy outside." "It's more like showing off than complaining." Pretending not to hear the wind and sand, leaning against the tree branch without moving. Ren Song didn't care and smiled, saying, "Vice Minister Yun has arrived. She sat down with me and seems to be in a bad mood." I advised her a few words. "Did you two argue?" When someone talks nonsense, the wind and sand usually also talk nonsense. Women are like cats. When spring comes, cats bark. Unfortunately, I'm not in a good mood today and didn't get along well with a few words, so I drove her away. This kid must have known that Yun Su had broken up with him, and perhaps he had already received Yun Su's support, which was intentionally to anger him. Yun Su is not only the deputy director of Luqing Xuanwu, but also an important support for Luqing Xuanwu. Now I have abandoned him and turned to Ren Song's embrace. If you add 1, I will subtract 1, and the difference will never stop at 2. Ren Song chuckled twice and said, "By the way, Zhao Shiwei just privately asked me for a little maid from the Ascending Heaven Pavilion, otherwise I will report you to the second young master. I will send him as my own choice, and I hope you don't have any trouble." Fengsha suddenly laughed and said, "Thank you so much. I haven't learned a lot from you in vain these past few years." Ren Song smiled shyly and said, "Like a teacher, like an apprentice." Both of them were laughing, their eyes met, and flames burst out. "Just now, I just casually helped a little maid, and I couldn't even name her. It wasn't really a big deal." Suddenly being sent out like this by Ren Song, the situation is very different. He has already lost his real power, and if he can bear to ignore it, his authority may be damaged, and life will become increasingly difficult to endure. Ren Song will definitely make every move forward, step by step, peeling from the periphery to the core like an onion, until he can't help but fight back. Since we have to fight back sooner or later, the earlier, the better. The first time is the best. Strike with 1 punch to avoid 100 punches. So he must save someone this time, it has nothing to do with who he wants to save. Otherwise, a passive move will lead to a gradual downfall. Zhao Shiwei has just been angry with him, and now he has the support of Ren Song. Ordinary methods are definitely useless. Trying to force someone to spit out the meat they have eaten will inevitably expose some hidden strength. After all, Ren Song holds great power, and as long as he finds a clear goal, he can easily strike and eradicate it. No matter what choice he makes, Ren Song will not suffer any losses. A little maid may seem insignificant, but in fact, she is the general starting gesture. This kid is really cunning. Especially, I personally taught it. The banquet ended, and Zhao, as usual, led a group of guards to escort the second prince back to his mansion. Of course, she also brought the round-faced girl who came from the Ascending Heaven Pavilion. After finishing everything, lead her back to her own residence. As soon as the door closed, Zhao Shiwei immediately restrained his mischievous smile and went over to set up the chairs and chairs. He didn't light the lights, the windows were also closed, and the room was very dark, only barely looking at things. The round-faced girl groped in the darkness and sat down face to face with him, whispering, "How long do I have to wait?" The princess's meaning is to be prepared for any danger. Zhao Shiwei sighed and said, "After this, you have already left an impression on Fengsha. I am also the confidant of the second prince, and he would never have thought that you were a princess. As for what will happen in the future, I don't know." The round-faced girl lowered her head and said, "Brother, I'm so scared. The matter is not yet settled, there are many variables." Zhao Shiwei reached out and gently stroked her cheek, comforting her, "Maybe it's none of your business. Then I'll beg the princess to change your identity and marry someone with a beautiful and charming demeanor." The round-faced girl threw herself into his arms, not crying out loud, but silently shedding tears. The fate of a small person is like a duckweed in a rapids, with no room for autonomy except to follow the flow. At night, the lights in Hongfang were brightly lit, and the pier across the river was also adorned with wind lanterns. They both stayed up all night, singing and reaching their peak, drunk and dreaming, moving goods all night, sweating profusely. The fate of a person, the distance between heaven and earth, always leaves one deeply saddened. 2 streets south of the dock is the patrol officer in charge of the city's docks, waterways, and public security. There is a small tea stall with a black shed at the back alley of the patrol officer, which usually operates until very late. The small tea stand is a husband and wife stand. It sells hot tea in winter, herbal tea in summer, and some dim sum made by little women. The sugar is rich and sweet, and it is greasy. Coupled with the bitter tea made by men, it has a special taste, and the price is affordable. The captors of the city patrolling department like to come here to have a rest, drink tea, eat dim sum, and flirt with charming young women. It's late at night now, and the small tea stall has set up a small table and a few low stools under the high wall, with a flickering and suffocating wind lamp hanging on the side wall. I don't know when it started, but this person was specifically left to speak private words to others. Once someone is seated, the tea stall couple will easily not come over. The sandstorm sat alone at the table, drank some bitter tea, ate some sweet and greasy dim sum, and waved his legs leisurely. Yu read www.yuukangshu.net and could not see that he was in an extreme dilemma. As soon as he left, a black-robed man slowly followed and lingered nearby, looking very inconspicuous. This person did not deliberately hide his tracks, clearly receiving instructions from Rensong to protect, not to track. Of course, there must also be a sense of surveillance. We must get out of the predicament under Rensong's gaze. A thin blue sealed booklet suddenly lay on the greasy tabletop, attracting the gaze of the sandstorm. This is a funeral report. A skinny man dressed in strong attire sat cautiously across from him. Whether intentionally or unintentionally, the dim wind lights on the wall did not fully illuminate his face. One person died of a broken neck and the other died of a fractured skull. Both of them had no defensive injuries, indicating that they didn't even have a chance to fight back. It's impossible for an acquaintance to strike from behind, and neither of them had time to react. The killer is very powerful. Thank you, Captain Wu. Fengsha casually thanked him and picked up the inspection form, flipping through it gently. Although Yun Su said he had taken care of the patrol department and agreed to take care of the Wang Vice Guard, he was still worried about the sewer capsizing and insisted on personally intervening to feel at ease. To put it simply, I can't believe Yun Su anymore. Vice Governor Wang personally came forward to investigate this case. I don't want to get involved and don't ask many questions. I only know that one of them is a newly transferred manager from Xuanxiang Trading Company, and the other is a local person who was just sent as an attendant. Xingtian Pavilion is the headquarters of Luqing Xuanwu, while Xuanxiang Trading Company is the headquarters of Luqing Zhuke. The name on the surface is used to conceal one's identity in the dark. The sandstorm casually threw the booklet back onto the table. This follower is undoubtedly a dead soldier, who would never die for the sake of death. Killing a vermilion bird guard with his life is indeed cruel and poisonous. If he were caught off guard, it would directly lead to his predicament. Who on earth sent this person? Chapter 5. The Sky of Flowing City, Still the Original Sky. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Captain Wu looked at the expression on Fengsha's face and boldly reminded him, Vice Guard Wang is a snake and only watches people's throats. If he bites, he won't let go. You need to be careful. Fengsha didn't care about a small deputy guard and asked, what's the reaction of Xuanxiang Trading Company? Not at the moment. They've lost 2 people, so I'm sure they can't swallow this breath. I think the reason why Vice Guard Wang stepped in and intervened may be. Maybe it's exactly what Xuanxiang Trading Company meant. Constable Wu clearly cared about Wang Fuwei very much, and he kept mentioning it repeatedly, clearly wanting to borrow a knife to kill him. The sandstorm is actually very satisfying, and ambitious people are easy to control. Suddenly, a faint light flickered in my eyes, deep and boundless like the night sky, with stars twinkling in my eyes. If Vice Guard Wang is really a person who doesn't know what to do, then this Vice Guard will probably sit to the end and be replaced by someone with virtue and ability. Although the deputy guard and the constable are only 1 level apart, in fact, officials are officials, and there is a huge gap between them. Without special opportunities or support from influential people, one can never cross it in their lifetime. In the words of the wind and sand, there is a clear meaning of support, and the magic eyes project this meaning directly onto the human heart without any reservation. Just like throwing a spinning flat stone onto a human's heart lake, as long as the angle and strength are clever, it will definitely create a series of ripples. Wu's eyes lit up as he rubbed his hands and said, if I could do something for Fengsha, Wu would definitely go through fire and water. It's not easy for outsiders to interfere in the internal affairs of the patrol department. At most, I can beat the drums. As long as Vice Guard Wang doesn't do anything bad, no one can do anything bad about him. I understand. Inspector Wu's expression changed slightly and he whispered, don't worry, this case won't be investigated. Fengsha smiled and said, to investigate, not only do we need to investigate, but we also need to investigate thoroughly and provide convincing explanations. Constable Wu was extremely surprised. He thought that the sandstorm hoped to suppress this murder case, but according to his words, it was not. I can't trust Vice Guard Wang. I can trust you, and I believe the results you have found will definitely satisfy me. Captain Wu showed a sudden expression and hesitated, saying, after all, Vice Guard Wang is a Shangguan. I'm afraid I won't be able to handle this case. It seems that Lord Jinwei has an urgent matter to send him on a business trip. He may not be able to come back in a few days. Please handle the case as soon as possible, and don't worry about anything else. Yun Su said that Vice Guard Wang would be transferred, so the sandstorm naturally pretended to be arranged by him intentionally. Captain Wu suddenly let out a sigh and quickly smiled, look at me, I'm stupid. I was just worried about you. By the way, there's one more thing. Wind and sand hooked their fingers, and their eyes began to flicker eerily again. Captain Wu quickly leaned over. The Sanha gang, which occupies the Sanha dock, is actually a notorious group of river bandits. The bandits' names are swarming, so it's best to eliminate them tonight. Captain Wu was momentarily stunned. The sandstorm didn't explain, so he picked up a sweet cake from the plate and stuffed it into his mouth. He took a sip of bitter tea and ate it with relish, puffing his cheeks. He even patted his mouth a few times. This means asking people to submit their names and deeds. He entrusted a deadly case to someone else's hands, and of course, he had to drag people onto the pirate ship, otherwise how could he rest assured? If Constable Wu is too foolish to understand this meaning, it means he is not reliable and cannot accomplish anything. Constable Wu was obviously a smart person, and with the influence of psychic powers, he subconsciously believed that doing so would be beneficial to him. He quickly stated, don't worry, Fengsha. None of them can escape. Fengsha Gung forcefully swallowed the pastry in his mouth and grabbed Captain Wu's shoulder, saying with a smile, "You must keep it confidential. After this is done, you will have an extra good friend, and perhaps the patrol department will also have an additional deputy guard." Wu Yu's head and nose became thick, nodding heavily. "Let's go." Fengsha stood up and patted her buttocks, then glanced at the black-robed man in the shadow of the distant wall corner, showing a mischievous smile. The Sanhe gang is certainly not a group of river thieves, but rather a trusted confidant hidden in the city by Rensong. Rensong thought he didn't know, but unfortunately he did. Luqing has been operating for 10 years, not to mention more than a dozen new outsiders. He knows exactly how many new mice have entered the city. This is actually a very kind warning. It is also a declaration of strength. The sky of Luqing is still the original sky. I remain silent, there are no clouds in the sky. If I get angry, the thunder will be fierce. There is more than one pavilion in Xingtian Pavilion, and behind the main building, there is a garden that covers a wide area. The garden is adorned with rockeries, flowing water, stone bridges, and stone corridors. The meticulously designed flower garden separates many individual buildings, giving people a feeling of winding paths and seclusion. It is private, hidden, and has excellent scenery. The southernmost end of the garden is adjacent to the flowing river embankment, introducing a small amount of river water to form a circular island in the center of the lake. The island is shaped like a turtle, with 4 legs and 4 bridges. The buildings are surrounded by snakes, and it sends messages southward. If viewed from a high altitude, it is like a snake spinning its turtle body, dominating the river with its momentum, giving people a sense of exquisite craftsmanship. This island in the center of the lake is the core forbidden area of Xingtian Pavilion and the headquarters of Luqing Xuanwu. On the left front toe of the turtle-shaped lake island, there is a small building facing the embankment, with a flowing river outside the embankment. The small building is gray and unremarkable, appearing somewhat dilapidated on the outside, and even more simple or rudimentary on the inside, with only 1 desk, 1 chair, and 1 bed, actually more like a prison cell. The wooden recliner slanted towards the leaking broken window, which was facing the flowing river. Under the moonlight, the waves shimmered like silver gauze. On a cold spring night, a thin blanket was forcefully pulled onto the body, and the wind and sand looked coldly at the flowing river outside the window in a daze. Yu reading www.yuukangshu.net. Every time a psychic power is applied, it will more or less suffer from backlash. The scene is like walking in an endless hell, where 100 ghosts and demons come together to search for their souls. The fear of terror is enough to make ordinary people mentally break down. Since childhood, year after year, day after day, I have endured repeated hardships, seemingly endless. It is precisely because of this that his spirit is far more solid than ordinary people. As hard and crystal clear as a diamond, it is difficult to leave scratches even with a sharp knife or axe. At most, feeling pain makes it difficult to sleep, and it's not enough to go crazy. When the sky was bright, there was a sudden knocking on the door, urgent and heavy. With a creaking sound, Rensong pushed the door open and burst in. He was furious and said, "Something happened. I thought I should tell you." Fengsha yawned and made a strange voice, saying, "It turns out that Mr. Ren is coming with great pleasure. Please come in and don't be polite. Just treat this place as your own home and sit wherever you like." Rensong didn't bother with him and said directly, "I don't know what happened." The Sanhe gang on the other side of the Sanhe dock was suddenly surrounded and suppressed by the City Patrol Bureau. Look at your impatience, you thought the Ascending Heaven Pavilion was surrounded by someone. I haven't even heard of what the Sanhe gang is. Rensong's face twisted with anger and he suppressed his anger, saying, "Did you see Constable Wu from the City Patrol Department last night?" "Right. The Sandstorm recalled, he invited me to have tea and dim sum. By the way, the bitter tea and sweet cakes in that tea stand are really unique in the city, and the landlady is also a little pretty." Well, at least it's okay to look at them under the wind light at night. Ren Song quickly interrupted, it's like this. Captain Wu left with a large number of constables at the back. Surprisingly, he even dispatched a team of patrol officers to surround the Sanhedok. Fengsha looked innocent and said, just surround yourself, what's with you? Chapter 6. Good horses don't eat back grass. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Ren Songdeng choked and suddenly sighed, candidly saying, I used the Sanha gang to place the new Xuanwu guard. They didn't receive orders, so of course they didn't dare to resist the officers and soldiers. They had to choose to break through. How about the casualties? Did anyone get caught? All rushed out, mostly with some minor injuries, fortunately no one died. The sandstorm was a bit disappointed. It would be great if we could kill a few people, but he couldn't help but say to himself, it's good if people are fine. The matter with the patrol bureau should be handled by Vice Minister Yun. Why are you looking for me? The city patrol bureaus in various regions are all under the jurisdiction of the patrol department. Princess Yunshu is the supervisor of the patrol department, and all the constables and city patrol soldiers in the country are under her jurisdiction. Ren Song lowered his face coldly and said, I have contacted Vice Minister Yun, and she asked someone to tell me that she is not here. I was slightly surprised by the sandstorm. He used Wu's head to besiege the Sanhedok, but it was just a time difference. He firmly believed that Yun Su could not intervene in the lower-level affairs so quickly. Unexpectedly, she refused to even intervene in the aftermath. This little girl just broke up with him, do you still want to have a falling out with Ren Song? Do you really think a princess is so important and irreplaceable? Don't forget that she still has 2 younger brothers. I really angered Xuanwu, it's not impossible for someone else to support him. Ren Song gritted his teeth fiercely and bowed deeply, please help me, Fengsha. Both the Vermilion Bird Guard and the Xuanwu Guard are elites cultivated by the 4 spirits with tremendous energy and effort, and they are not something that can be obtained with just one mouth open. These Xuanwu Guards are intended to take over the manpower of Luqing Xuanwu in the future, and any loss of personnel would be a significant loss. No one died by chance this time, who can guarantee next time? Can sandstorms be found once, but can they be found a second time? This time it was just a group of officers and soldiers from the city patrol. Will it be a group of masked experts surrounding and killing next time? Because there is too much uncertainty, it is even more frightening. The wind and sand lazily leaned back into the lounge chair and said, I'm just an idle person now. I don't have any position or authority, how can I help take on the position of the chief steward? Ren Song's temples were bulging on both sides, causing his handsome face to appear somewhat distorted. It's my fault for all the mistakes. Fengsha, there are many, so don't argue with me. Who dares to argue with you? Fengsha snorted, I couldn't even save a little girl yesterday, and I don't have the ability to deal with the aftermath. I have a weak heart. Ren Song took a deep breath and suppressed his anger, saying, don't worry, Fengsha. I will definitely bring the person back. Still not convinced. Fengsha turned her gaze and said lightly, look outside the window, it's already dawn. How difficult she has been to endure this night. It is precisely because of his softness of heart that he did not understand the principle of taking advantage of all the advantages and taking advantage of all the advantages that he was exiled to Luqing. One mistake is being immature, and 2 mistakes are being foolish. Ren Song's angry expression finally turned into a bitter smile and said, if that little maid is bullied, I promise that Zhao Guard will pay double the price. The sandstorm's eyes began to flicker, with a smile on their face. Although I didn't kill the Vermilion Bird Guard yesterday, he died in front of me. If the Vermilion Bird side insists on investigating, I hope the Lord can say a few good words for me. Zhu Ke is in charge of foreign business and inevitably has some unclean areas, so of course, she is afraid of Xuanwu's criticism. Death to a Vermilion Bird Guard can be both heavy and light. As long as Ren Song's attitude is firm, he will definitely be able to subdue it. Don't worry, Fengsha. Ren Song said solemnly, I have seen them die from self-destruction with my own eyes. I am about to investigate the cause, and I will definitely uncover the mastermind behind it and punish them severely. Being serious, he didn't blush, but his heart was truly disheartened. He thought he was in charge of Xuanwu and had already taken control of the situation. Even if the influence of the sandstorm was deeply rooted, he could at least stand up to it. I never expected to lose so quickly, so miserably, that I couldn't even hold on for a day and was choked at the door of my life. This invisible slap in the face is really hot and painful, who knows who received it. Fengsha nodded, pulled on a thin blanket, and covered his head to sleep. Ren Song walked out with a gloomy expression on his face. Just as he was about to throw the door heavily, he glanced at the sand and wind that seemed to be sleeping on the recliner, shivering uncontrollably. His hands immediately relaxed, and the door gently closed. The sandstorm suddenly opened its eyes, with a deep and sparkling light, and no joy of victory on its face. Even if Ren Song fails 100 times, he can still start 101 times. Even if Ren Song is killed, there will still be Zhang Song and Li Song. And he. As long as he loses once, there must be no next time. No one knows the four spirits better than him. This is an incredibly powerful and efficient secret sect, with a domineering and oppressive style that is suffocating. No matter what resistance they encounter, the four spirits will immediately counterattack with unimaginable terrifying strength until they are completely eradicated. Its speed and intensity are like heavenly punishment. Luqing is not only a prison, but also a protection, provided that the tacit understanding is not broken. It cannot violate the bottom line of the four spirits, and the difficulty lies in not knowing where the bottom line is. It seems that knowing that there are thunder pits around me, if I slip, I will die. However, the fog is deep and I can't see my fingers when I reach out, and I can't see the location of the thunder pit clearly. I can only move step by step, anxiously probing. This invisible shackle makes people feel constrained, afraid to let go of their hands to attack, and even afraid to let go of their hands to defend. Just like a fish in the net, it is gradually tightening. The feeling of despair is like cold seawater, slowly overflowing over the neck, suffocating. Struggle may be useless. Without struggle, there is no doubt of death. In the agony of backlash, I fell asleep in a hazy state, and outside the window, the sky seemed to be bright. The sunlight penetrated through the window and spread on my body, like my wife's soft and warm hands gently caressing her forehead covered in cold sweat. There was a soft thud and someone knocked on the door again. The sandstorm awakened and responded with a dazed response. With a creak, a person walked in, and a familiar aroma seeped into their nose. It's actually Yunshu. The wind and sand couldn't help but freeze. Yunsu walked gently to the bedside, with a veil still hanging on his face. The pair of beautiful pupils surged like the bottom of a river under moonlight, deep, intense, and cold, full of complex emotions. Fengsha stared silently, unable to think of the reason why Yunsu came to find him at this moment. With a cloud virtual personality, it is better to make mistakes than to run back and bow down. So what is she doing here? The two of them looked at each other like cockfighting, and neither of them spoke. Yunsu couldn't help but turn his gaze away and look out the window at the flowing river. His voice was like a mountain spring, fresh with a chill. Can't you figure out why I'm looking for you? Just yesterday, on impulse, I killed a deputy envoy of the Dongniao mission, Yunsu said slowly in a calm and abnormal tone. Dongniao is one of the 7 major powers in the world, with a vast territory and strong influence, especially occupying the main waterways downstream of the Liuhe River. Once the news of the envoy being killed is transmitted back, Chenlu cannot give a proper explanation, fearing that his water luck will be cut off. When the goods cannot be transported in or sold, the economy and people's livelihood of Chenlu will be severely affected. This is not without precedent. In order to quell the anger of Dongniao, no matter how noble Yun Su's identity is, he will definitely be sacrificed. Chapter 7. Lovers and Bitches. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. The sandstorm was aware of the seriousness of the situation and couldn't help but shout, "Are you crazy?" Yun Su's beautiful eyes gazed deeply, as if she wanted to firmly remember his appearance at this moment in her heart. She said lightly, "He said quite a few outrageous things and even tampered with me. Do you think he should die?" The originally unusually indifferent tone suddenly had a hint of coquettishness towards the lover. After calming down in the sandstorm, he tilted his head and scanned up and down, coldly saying, "Why am I so skeptical? This little girl is not only fierce like a mother tiger, but also possesses the cunning of a fox and the cold-blooded nature of a venomous snake, and is not impulsive enough to lose her sanity." Just listen carefully. Yun Su's tone calmed down. "The reason is not important, the consequences are important. That's what you taught me." Fengsha chuckled and said, "It's a bit late to think of me now, isn't it?" The expression under Yun Su's veil was immediately extremely embarrassed, with a pair of fists tightly clenched in his sleeve, and his pointed nails seemed to pierce through his palm. A face full of sand and wind doesn't matter. This is a choice between survival and death. Don't say a few sarcastic words, even if it's a bit too extreme, you'll have to swallow your pride. Yun Su forcibly restrained his sharp gaze and lowered his gaze, saying, "If you want me to beg you, would you like to help come up with an idea first?" Fengsha pouted and said, "It's just a scheme of framing and framing. Would you never think of it? I'm afraid I can't stand up on my own and plan to borrow Xuanwu's power. As a result, Ren Song doesn't pay attention to you, does he?" Yun Su gritted his teeth and said, "Yes." Ren Song not only put on airs, but also asked her if she would be willing to sleep, showing her shame. At a critical moment of life and death, despite being angry, I dare not turn my back. I can only hold back my anger and say that I will consider it for a few days. I couldn't help but think of the good wind and sand in my heart. The two of them have been nominal lovers for so long, and she often asks for help from others. Despite the sandstorm, she is full of flowers and flowers, but in fact, she hasn't even touched her finger. Anyway, she only benefited from the benefits and didn't suffer any losses. Before, Ren Song was an inconspicuous little servant who had never looked at him seriously before. Now, when he turns around and makes decisions, he dares to bully others. I can't accept it psychologically. Coupled with the sudden counterattack from the sandstorm, Ren Song's attack was both fierce and accurate, and he appeared to be strong but was at a loss. I couldn't help but realize that the sandstorm still hides strength, not as weak as it appears on the surface. I regret it a lot in my heart, but I still refuse to give in. Fengsha smiled and said, "What exactly do you want? Let's hear it first." "I don't ask much. There are more than a dozen women, and they must die. They are young, beautiful, and have a good physique, but their skills are even better. They should try to be locals and not have any relationship with me. Does this mean there are not many requirements?" "You seem to have some misunderstanding about the meaning of the word 'not much,'" said Fengsha with a slanted eye. Yun Su forced him to ask, "Is there any?" Yes. The question is, why should I help you?" Yun Su suddenly felt suffocated and his voice couldn't help but lower. "I promise to support you and not support Ren Song. Will I listen to you in the future?" After speaking, he bit hard on his lower lip, almost breaking through and bleeding. She hates Ren Song for being too shameless and despicable, which is chilling. Hate the wind and sand for being too cunning, hiding their strength silently. Both men are scoundrels, causing her to suffer this humiliation. Yun Su thought it was enough to show weakness, but he didn't know that Fengsha rolled his eyes and said, "Are you trying to lure a white wolf with empty hands again?" He thought it was still in the past, and it was easy to say anything by being coquettish. Under the veil of Yunshu, her face turned green and white, and her pair of dark and beautiful eyes were momentarily bright and dark, half shy and half annoyed. I know I was wrong. I really regret it now. Can you please help me? The wind and sand froze for a moment. If it weren't for falling into a desperate situation of powerlessness, Yun-Su, who has always been proud, would never have swallowed his pride to such an extent. After some thought, he remained unmoved and said, "As a woman, you are indeed very beautiful, but you are not worth my money. What are you going to do to help me?" Yun-Su said with a look of despair, "You shouldn't ask me, you should ask yourself, what would happen if Dong Miao instigates punishment?" He understands Yun-Su. Even though this little girl can tolerate any humiliation now, once she regains her composure, as long as she finds an opportunity, she will take revenge 10 times or 100 times. She must be made aware of her strength before hesitating about the consequences in the future. Yun-Su's eyes became very weak, and mixed emotions flowed freely in the depths of her beautiful eyes, leaving only endless fear in the end. The dark radiance of the wind and sand's pair of pupils is even stronger. "So, you write me a note about how to write your own thoughts. You must ensure that once the content is made public, you only have the option of hanging yourself. It's just one chance, whether to write or not, the door is over there." The psychic power projected this time is not just a small stone floating in the water, but more like a giant rock crashing into the heart lake. What splashes open is not just ripples and circles, but layers of flipping waves. Yun-Su stood in a daze for a long time, suddenly stumbled to the edge of the desk. A delicate hand trembled as it dipped its pen into ink, and its eyes gradually showed a crazy emotion. At first, the writing was still messy, but gradually it became faster and heavier, and the strokes became heavier. It seems that all the anger, shame, and anger have been engraved into the wooden table under the paper. After finishing writing, her delicate body was almost completely empty, leaving only her hands and feet stiff. She kept her head down and her cheeks blushed like the long autumn glow. With one hand tightly gripping the corner of the note, one foot hard and the other soft, he returned to the bedside and shook his hands to lift it up for the sandstorm to see. With a gentle glance at Fengsha, his thick skin made him blush after watching a few scenes, while feeling dizzy and tired. Although Yun-Su was at her weakest point in willpower, it was not easy to suppress her, as her mental energy was greatly consumed. "Gong Qingxiu, do you know?" Fengsha struggled to muster up his spirits. "What did you mention to her for?" Yun-Su suddenly looked up, his eyes fixed, as if suddenly realizing. "Master Gong is famous for his sword dance and swordsmanship. My disciple's swordsmanship is probably not bad. She is your person. Listen to me speak slowly." The wind and sand lowered his voice and said, "Master Gong trained a group of female swordsmen before his death. They are from the same lineage as Gong Qingxiu. They once protected Master Gong and performed in the world. They have been skilled in killing mountain bandits, and are skilled in killing." Yun-Su's eyes lit up instantly, showing a brilliant radiance, and he forgot to continue feeling embarrassed for a moment. If it weren't for the need to care for these fellow disciples, Gong Qingxiu wouldn't have been unable to make ends meet. She had no choice but to sell me the Ascending Heaven Pavilion. What about me? Yun-Su didn't care about these things at all and asked, "Can you guide them?" "Of course. They have seen the world with Master Gong and cannot settle for mediocrity. They obediently cooperate with each other and educate their children. So I built a killer organization to raise them. The leader's identity is fictional, and they don't know it's me." The wind and sand showed a contented smile. He has been working hard for so long and possesses amazing potential, which is just the tip of the iceberg. Chapter 8. Enemies on Both Sides. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Yun-Su's eyes lit up and he said, "So it turns out that you're playing tricks on the East Tower. No wonder it's mysterious. I only heard about the female assassin Ishui. I only know there's a West Wind villa outside." Fengsha snorted. "It seems you had a bad idea of looking at the East Tower." Yun-Su didn't answer and lowered his eyes, saying, "I have already written the note. Now you can hand them over to me. Then hurry up and bring your little ears over obediently. Yun-Su hesitated a little and bent over with his long legs. Fengsha slept motionless on the lounge chair, tilting her head and leaning against her ear. Yun-Su's strong suppression and avoidance reaction caused his long eyelashes to tremble violently. Fengsha gently said the list, then reached out and pinched the note in her hand. Under the veil of Yun-Su, her cheeks were boiling hot like blood, and her fingers clenched tightly, almost tearing through the note, refusing to let go. Fengsha smiled and took out the signature representing the leader of the assassin's token from her arms with the other hand. Exchange a piece of paper for a killer organization, and you won't lose out on this deal. Yun-Su suddenly grabbed it and pulled it back hard, but of course it couldn't be pulled. After a while, he gritted his silver teeth and said, "Besides this time, you must also do your best to help me in the future." His voice suddenly decreased and he said weakly, "We need to be the same as before." The dim light in the sandstorm's eyes lit up again, and he nodded with a smile. Although he has no romantic status, he still treats you like a lover, okay? Yun-Su finally slowly released his hand. The pair of beautiful eyes exuded an extremely oppressive and humiliating expression, as if not only notes were released, but also reserved and dignified. The wind and sand picked up the note and casually folded it into my arms. We've been dating for so long, and you understand my character. As long as you don't put me in a trap, I'll just treat it as nothing and I won't threaten you. In fact, the utility of this thing is very limited. If you really tear your face apart, Yun-Su can argue that someone is counterfeiting handwriting. The main thing is to undermine this little girl's self-esteem, and from now on, don't pretend in front of him, especially don't act like a princess. What kind of thing is it? I personally wrote it down. Yun-Su held the token tightly in his palm and said, "Can I go now?" Walk slowly, no delivery. As for what Yun-Su did with them, he didn't ask at all, nor did he want to interfere. Even if he asked Yun-Su, he wouldn't say anything, and what he said was definitely not true. A woman like Yun-Su can't trust anyone at all. Fengsha has a private room in the Xingtian Pavilion, elegantly decorated. The outer hall and inner bedroom are separated by a screen, and there is also a large balcony to the south, facing the large performance and dance hall in the garden below. There are more than one lounge chair in the private room. There is one balcony, one living room, and one bedroom. Because I have never been able to sleep well, sandstorms have a special fondness for lounge chairs, and I can lean back and squint for a while at any time. When I saw Yun-Su in the morning, my mental exhaustion was a bit high, and I still felt very tired by noon. The sunshine outside was just right, accompanied by the cool breeze of early spring. Lazily, I didn't want to get up and looked quietly at the garden below. There is a group of cats in the big garden, orange-gray, yellow and black, all of which are beautiful in appearance. Some passing maids occasionally stop to tease the cat and emit joyful laughter. This scene looks very beautiful, making people couldn't help but smile. This is one of the benefits of convincing Rensong, at least not daring to imprison his freedom or send someone to track and monitor him. This kid can bend and stretch, and when he should bow his head, he will immediately bow his head. He is definitely a person. The more it is like this, the more careful it is, because the reason to bring him down is constant. It is not transferable by Rensong's will, and if it cannot be achieved once, it will only come back again. It becomes increasingly meticulous and sinister, with no end at all. Also, who is the person who killed the Vermilion Bird Guard and framed him for death? I have never had a clue. If left unattended, there will inevitably be disasters in the future, and perhaps someone will catch you off guard. The sandstorm began to give off a feeling of being attacked from both sides. Sigh, the world is so beautiful, life is really unbearable. I can't sleep well at night and can't squint during the day. The voice of Captain Wu came from outside the door. I, Wu Tianhao, have been ordered to come and inquire about the case. With a tone of business. Fengsha stood up and opened the door, laughing, "Captain Wu, please come in quickly." Wu Tianhao was wearing an official robe and carrying a long sword, with a bearded beard and a stern face that exuded a strong sense of self-reliance. He commanded to the left and right, "You guys, guard the staircase, and no one is allowed to approach." The constables were ordered to disperse. Wu Tianhao walked into the room with a majestic step, closing the door with his hands behind his back. As the door closed, his waist almost bent down at the same time and said, "Fengsha, sit down quickly. Thank you for waiting. It's really frustrating." Fengsha sat down and chuckled lightly, "Is Constable Wu here to take me?" "How dare you?" Wu Tianhao apologized, "After all, it's a case of 2 lives. You have to show off, otherwise it's not easy to hand over the task." "Please sit down," sighed the sandstorm and gestured. Wu Tianhao quickly thanked him and leaned against half of the stool, cautiously saying, "I'm here to apologize to Fengsha. That Sanhe gang was such a tough guy last night, Fengsha waved his hand and said, "It doesn't matter. If Captain Wu is willing to give me face, he is a good friend. Whether it will be successful or not is another matter. I also want them to learn a lesson, but I don't mean to kill them all. This matter ends here." Surprisingly, none of those Xuanwu guards were killed or captured. Not getting blood stained on a petition is like leaving a way out for oneself. This Constable Wu is definitely an old martial artist. Wu Tianhao apologized repeatedly and said, "Fengsha really predicted everything as he had imagined. Vice Guard Wang received a document early this morning and has already left the city." Fengsha nodded with a smile on her face. "Yunshu is still very reliable in handling affairs." Wu Tianhao whispered, "I have read the official documents. Half a month ago, a cargo ship was robbed in the outer waterway of the Liuhe River. It is a batch of precision-cast weapons of great value. Such a big case has caused a great stir. If we can accomplish a great feat, we may lose our lives." Fengsha couldn't help but laugh. This guy was clearly worried about Wang Liue's achievements and wished he could be killed. "I'll be Captain Wu's own person, so I won't hide it from you. That ship is my ship, the cargo on board is my cargo, the person escorting the cargo is mine, and the bandits robbing the cargo are also mine. I don't believe anyone can find out the whereabouts of this cargo. In fact, this matter has nothing to do with him. The ship and cargo are owned by Xuanxiang Trading Company. Luqing Zhuke sent people to rob them, in other words, they are stealing from their own hands. At this moment, it happens to be used to scare people." Wu Tianhao's mouth gradually widened as he listened, almost able to swallow a fist. Weapons cannot be sold at a high price when transported to the official workshop. Going to the black market is the most sought-after item, and a trip can bring astonishing profits. The higher the risk, the more worthwhile it is. Unfortunately, it can only be done occasionally, otherwise it would be too eye-catching. The casualness spoken by Fengsha doesn't seem like a big deal, but in fact, smuggling weapons is a serious crime and if caught, one will undoubtedly die. People who dare to do such things are either fugitives or have a clear vision. Anyone who gets involved in any of them can easily disappear. Chapter 9. Amazing Beauty. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Wu Tianhao couldn't help but sweat as he listened, wishing he hadn't had these ears. The sandstorm suddenly turned around and felt something was wrong. Where is it bad for Yun Su to transfer people? Why did he transfer Wang Liwei to investigate this matter? No intention. Coincidence. Take down Vice Guard Wang with the sword of Vermilion Bird. If Vice Guard Wang is not killed and he really discovers something, will Xuanxiang Trading Company suffer? I'm afraid even Vermilion Bird will be implicated. Doing such things privately and being exposed is always a hassle. The sandstorm lowered its eyes slightly and smiled as usual, the visitor is a guest. It's better for Captain Wu to stay and have a meal. Arrange a table for the Constable brothers outside as well, and choose a few handsome girls to dance with swords to cheer up, said the maid outside the door. The little maid was so fragile that she hesitated and didn't go out, blushing and stealing glances. At first glance, Fengsha looked quite familiar. It turned out to be the round-faced girl who couldn't be named. Most likely, it was arranged by Ren Song. He took the person back from Zhao Shiwei's hand and showed his face, indicating that the matter had been done. So it's you, Fengsha said with a smile. I'll talk to you later. Let's go get things done first. Yes. The little girl's face turned even redder and she quickly withdrew to arrange the banquet. Wu Tianhao finished the meal without knowing what to eat, hesitated for tea after the meal, and smiled bitterly. I used to think that the more I knew, the better. I wanted to hear everything and ask everything. Now I realize that ignorance is blessings. Having this insight shows that Constable Wu is not easy. Being a constable alone is truly mediocre, and perhaps he can go further in the future. Thanks to Feng Xiaogui's words, the villain understands. Wu Tianhao's bitter smile intensified, and his buttocks moved back and forth, as if he was sitting on a burning iron stool. The sandstorm was both coaxing and frightening, of course not just idle and boring. Seeing that Wu Tianhao was completely frightened, he chuckled and said, I happen to trouble Captain Wu with one more small matter. Wu Tianhao quickly sat upright and said, Fengsha, please speak up. The follower who died from hitting the wall has a strange background. I hope Captain Wu can investigate his situation before going to Xuanxiang Trading Company. Where does he live, what relatives he has, who he has close relationships with, and so on. Fengsha suddenly laughed and said, to investigate and apprehend criminals, Constable Wu is the true expert. It was Feng who made a fool of himself. Wu Tianhao dared not speak. Be sure to keep it confidential, this person is by no means simple. Fengsha restrained his expression and warned, bring a few skilled brothers with you recently to avoid any accidents. If you encounter any obstacles during the investigation, please pass me a note and I will solve it. He is deeply rooted in Luqing. Initially, it was easy to investigate individuals, but Ren Song kept a close eye on him. He dared not show his strength casually to avoid being hit. This Wu Tianhao's identity is just right. The City Patrol Bureau has always had a black and white background, making it easy to do things both openly and secretly. They are also shrewd and aware of current affairs. The key is that they don't feel sorry even if they die. After the instructions of the sandstorm were completed, I was about to serve tea and see off the guests when I knocked on the door a few times. Fengsha thought it was the round-faced little girl who came in to remove the leftovers, and casually responded. The door opened and a tall and stunning beauty walked in. Dressed in a lake green long skirt, standing there, the whole room seemed to be bright and fresh, with a faint fragrance that seemed to be non-existent gently rushing towards the face. The beautiful jade appearance of Zhong Tiandi, as if it were real or illusory, is extremely moving, making it hard to believe that this kind of beauty truly exists. Her beautiful eyes are as clear as the moon rising in the clear blue waves, yet possess boundless tranquility and mystery. This pair of beautiful and heart-wrenching eyes alone is enough to attract everyone's full attention, unwilling to take half of their gaze away and focus on the equally unparalleled appearance. With the gentle movement of the lotus steps, the curves of the figure that could only be sculpted by divine craftsmanship were highlighted, just like the majestic and magnificent peaks rising from the clouds. Walking between the lines, the clear wind caresses the mountain mist, graceful, with a gentle and ethereal vibe. Even if we use the most beautiful words in the world to elaborate and embellish, it is still not enough to fully describe the beauty of this beauty. Wu Tianhao's eyes were already stunned and straight, his mouth slightly opened, and he couldn't help but stand up. An old face turned black and red, revealing a look of embarrassment, as if ashamed of oneself. Qingxiu. Fengsha stood up with a slightly surprised expression and approached, saying, "Why did you come?" Gong Qingxiu said in a sweet voice without any impurities, I have some matters to discuss with Feng Shao, but unfortunately, I am disturbing Feng Shao's reception. Wu Tianhao felt as if he had heard the sound of heaven, as if someone had suddenly stuffed a handful of honey into his mouth. It was so sweet that he couldn't help but swallow his saliva and his throat twitched a few times. Feng Sha glanced at him apologetically and said, Captain Wu, what do you think? Captain Wu, Captain Wu. Wu Tianhao snapped back to his senses and stuttered, I have something else to do, so I'll say goodbye. He reluctantly moved back, but didn't dare to stare at Gong Qingxiu, as if taking another look would be a blasphemy against the beauty. It was only a few steps away from the door, and after walking for more than a dozen steps, I retreated out in a daze, and even more so, I closed the door in a daze. After closing it a few times, I realized that one foot was stuck in the crack of the door. I pinched it heavily but didn't feel any pain. I didn't even know that I was pinching my own foot, so Wu Tianhao felt even more ashamed. He hurriedly withdrew his foot, closed the door, and fled as if flying. Feng Sha withdrew his smiling gaze and said, Qingxiu has an amazing charm. Look at Constable Wu, he's so restless that he probably won't be able to sleep well for a few days. His wife has been suffering at night, The master has a precedent, and cultivating spiritual powers can easily lead to emotional debt. This is because a slight lack of attention can amplify a woman's favor towards him. However, spiritual power can backfire, and even a slight lack of restraint can cause the same attraction. So he has been trying his best to avoid being too intimate with a certain woman, and is even more careful when facing a peerless beauty like Gong Qingxiu. However, it is natural for women to love beauty and men to love beauty, so he is always in a very intense conflict and often cannot help but tease. Gong Qingxiu's water-spirited cheeks were embroidered with two stunning red clouds, and her seductive eyes emitted a reproachful look. The sandstorm sucked its nose, leaned comfortably on the balcony lounge chair, shrugged its shoulders a few times, and asked, What can I do for you? Firstly, thank you for saving the girl named Fu Jian. Gong Qingxiu took a step over and naturally covered Feng Sha with a thin blanket. A pair of flawless bare hands gently tucked in the edge of the blanket and said, Secondly, this morning when I went to see Qingya, I found that the building was empty and I was worried that something might happen to her. Qingya is the senior sister of Gong Qingxiu, one of the female swordsmen trained by Master Gong, and also the leader of this group of female swordsmen. Feng Sha exclaimed, What's there to worry about? This is not the first time Gong Qingya has been running around. It should be the same as usual, and she'll be back in 3 to 5 days. Yun Su wants to do something shameful with these female swordsmen, and of course he will transfer them. This little girl's movements are also fast enough. She actually took everyone away in the morning. It seems like she's really in a hurry. Chapter 10. Goodbye to the Dead Wife. You are listening at novelfull.audio. This time it's different. Qingya seems to have hurriedly packed her package, as if she's on a long journey, but she didn't even tell me. The other senior sisters are also not here. As Gong Qingxiu spoke, she picked up a frosted orange from the fruit platter and cut its skin with a knife, quickly cutting it into 6 beautiful orange flowers. A delicate jade-like hand was steady and fast, with a sharp blade that didn't even cut off a single orange vein, indicating that this stunning woman was not as delicate as her appearance. Feng Sha pondered and said, Okay, I need someone to investigate. By the way, what are you looking for from them? Gong Qingxiu hesitated for a moment, peeled off an orange petal and gave it to his mouth. She slowly said, Master, an old friend and descendant may be involved in a trouble, and there may be a risk of their lives. Therefore, I would like to ask a few senior sisters to help protect them for a few days. The sandstorm bit on the orange petal and chewed it a few times, but it was so sweet that it frowned like swallowing bitter medicine. Ren Song is watching closely, he really dares not extend his hand recklessly now. Gong Qingxiu gave him another petal and said softly, Since senior sister is not here, Qingxiu will find another way. Fengsha thought for a moment and said, so, I'll write you a note. With this note, you can borrow a few guards from Princess Ro's mansion, which should be enough to deter the little ones. Princess Ro is Yun Su, although she has nothing to do with the word Ro. Gong Qingxiu's beautiful and unparalleled jade face revealed an unexpected surprise, as if the scorching sun instantly broke through the dark clouds, enough to make any man unable to turn his eyes. The sandstorm forced a blind eye, lifted the thin blanket, and stood up to the edge of the table. Gong Qingxiu quickly put down the orange flowers and followed over to lay paper and grind ink. Picking up a brush and dipping it in ink in the wind and sand, it can be done in one fell swoop. Gong Qingxiu picked up the note and gently blew it, carefully folding it, as if it were a precious treasure in her arms. Fengsha smiled and said, it's okay, I'll write to you if I lose it. Gong Qingxiu showed an embarrassed expression and said, it's not good to trouble Fengsha. I really hope to be able to help you one day. Fengsha smiled dumbfounded and said, so much so that I hope to encounter trouble. Gong Qingxiu bit her almost tender lips and said, it's strange that Qingxiu said the wrong thing. Fengsha sighed and said, I believe you can see that my life is not easy now. If necessary, I will definitely ask you. Losing the position of Master Xuanwu means losing control of the Ascending Heaven Pavilion. The rules of the four spirits are deep and strict, and outsiders cannot know the internal situation. There are still signs of external weakness that can be found. With Gong Qingxiu's intelligence, it is impossible not to see it. Gong Qingxiu nodded, her cherry lips slightly parted, and she hesitated to speak. Fengsha said calmly, don't get involved in the matter between me and Ren Song. Even if I can't hold on in the end, there won't be anything wrong with the Ascending Heaven Pavilion. Gong Qingxiu's expression was very calm. Qingxiu still has the ability to protect herself. Fengsha smiled but remained silent. Gong Qingxiu appears delicate and gentle, but she is actually an outstanding swordsman. Otherwise, she would not have stood out from a group of experienced senior sisters and taken on the mantle of Gong Master. He had witnessed Gong Qingxiu's swordsmanship with his own eyes, almost to the point of doubt. If he really started to fight, at least he wouldn't find many opponents in Chenlu. Gong Qingxiu and her senior sisters are not vegetarians, otherwise they wouldn't be able to thrive in the assassin world. Unfortunately, he just sold it to Yun Su, so I'm afraid he won't survive a few. The strength of Xingtian Pavilion is decent for wandering in the martial arts world. When facing slightly larger forces, it is actually no different from fish belly. There are many people who covet the beauty of the palace, including some powerful characters. No matter how skilled one is in swordsmanship, nothing can be solved. Without his secret maintenance, this stunning figure would have become a private pet of a certain mansion long ago. Gong Qingxiu held the sandy sleeve and gently pulled him to the edge of the lounge chair, saying with a smile, let's take a break first. When we come back later, Qingxiu will make some small dishes for you, and then heat a pot of old wine to accompany you for a few drinks. Fengsha suddenly fell silent for a long time and said, I'm afraid it won't be possible today. I have something to do tonight. Then let's do it next time. The flash in Gong Qingxiu's eyes seemed to have a profound meaning. The wind and sand remained silent, sitting quietly in a recliner and leaning back, continuing to gaze at the cheerful group of cats in the garden. Gong Qingxiu gently covered him with a thin blanket and quietly retreated out. At night, insects chirp, and the moon shines through rolling clouds. A dilapidated house, a deserted courtyard with broken walls. At the end of the deserted courtyard, there is a small mound of graves. Fengsha sat in front of the grave, light and slow, igniting paper money after paper, maintaining the flickering fire. The flames illuminated the tombstone, with only 4 words on it. Tomb of loved wife. There is no name, no birth date, no death date, and even no person who erected a monument to leave their name. The flames illuminated the face, without tears or words. An indescribable calmness on the face and an indescribable heaviness in the eyes. The firelight is still burning in the pupils, rising and fading at times. A gust of wind swept and ashes flew. Throwing on the face, the fire lines scattered and slightly painful. Falling to the lips, with a lick of the tongue, it seemed very bitter. A few bird calls, monotonous and rough, penetrating and ethereal, as if hooking up with a human soul, quickly flying high and far, sinking into the night sky and merging into the stars. The sandstorm bent the remaining pile of paper money vigorously, dividing it into several stacks and gently surrounding it on the fire. Looking at the sudden surge of flames, with an indescribable tenderness in his expression, he seemed to see a slightly blurred delicate face through the flames. Yu reading www.uukangshu.net. In the rear, a cold and hoarse voice said, "You have lost your wife, I have lost my friend, and we can barely be considered to be in the same boat. Stop talking nonsense." Another voice, which seemed to have been engulfed by fireworks, suddenly became angry and said, "Do you not know the truth of having many dreams at night? It's not too late to say it after being chopped down, as long as you love to say it." This person speaks at a fast pace, clanging and clanging like a broken gong, appearing impatient. Fengsha slowly stood up and turned around. Two people, one tall and one short, equally thin, standing on the concave part of the collapsed broken wall, one holding a knife and the other holding a sword. Behind the two heads is the moon, which illuminates the human figure clearly, but cannot illuminate the human face clearly. It is vaguely visible that both are covered. Fengsha met the two people's gaze and said, "Are you going to kill me?" "Don't worry, I will bury you and your deceased wife together," said the tall man with a stern voice and a raised eyebrow. The short man glared at him and said coldly, "I want to take his head." The tall man's face trembled slightly, as if he had a bitter smile, his eyes suddenly cold, and he held his sword in his hand, flying forward. As fast as a shooting star, a long shadow under the moon. The polished sword light pressed against the throat. Fengsha's eyes were very indifferent, even showing a slight fluctuation. Obviously not afraid, as if the dying person is not him. Deep in the fundus of the eye, there is a faint light flickering, like cracks and molten lines appearing in a volcanic crater. "Why don't you hide? You don't know martial arts." The tall man's eyes were full of surprise as he suddenly withdrew his sword and sheathed it. Fengsha stared at his masked face, showing a playful expression. "What are you doing with your sword?" The short man arrived next to him at some point, and as he spoke, his short sword slashed towards the side of the sand and wind neck. The angle is sharp, ruthless and poisonous. The blade shines against the moonlight, shining brightly in the eyes of the wind and sand. The dim light suddenly flourished, like adding oil to the fire.